Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be working on what's possibly the world's most unreliable steam locomotive. These are what's known as a tea kettle, and LifeLike started producing these in 1971. They made them in a variety of different paint schemes, and they're actually pretty nice looking locomotives. However, they've built up a reputation as being riddled with problems, and they're so bad that over the years I've bought several lots with these, and I've yet to see a working model in person. The most common problems these things seem to have is that the gears strip out on them, and the second most common problem is that the motors go bad. So anyways, I got this one as a donation to the channel, and when we tested this thing out it seemed to be seized, so I believe the motor is still good, but the gears might be bad. So we'll see if we can get this thing working again. You can already see right off the bat there's some stuff which is not going so well, and the rods are quite bent, so I really don't know if we're actually going to be able to get this thing working again. But we'll see what we can do, and if we're lucky, we might be able to get a pretty infamous locomotive riding the rails once again. Certainly not going to be perfect, but let's try it out. Now, before I go cracking this thing open, I just want to show everybody what it's currently doing. So we'll set it up on the track here. We'll send it 12 volts, and it's not currently doing everything. We have to connect this red wire actually up to the rails, and you can hear that the motor is trying to go, but it's just not moving anywhere. So I think the entire drive is seized, which, you know, considering the fact that the drivers are all bent as they are, is really not surprising. So we'll bring this thing back over to the workbench and see if we can sort all that out. Hopefully the gears aren't stripped out too badly. So we'll begin disassembling this locomotive. We'll start by removing this screw which connects the shell to the rest of the body. This is the only thing holding the shell to the chassis, because there's just a couple clips on the back, so you pop that out and then all of this should come right apart as so. We have a light bulb. I don't know if that works. I didn't see it on when we tested it. And here's the entire gearbox. You can see there's a ton of old grime on here, which we're going to have to remove. Pretty much the whole thing's going to have to come apart, I think, in order to get this thing going again. So I guess we will also remove these two bottom screws here. One thing that I find kind of fascinating about this locomotive is that I find that LifeLike generally made more reliable locomotives than Bachmann and Tyco did at the same time. But this one might be the exception. As I said, these things just have so many different problems that this might have been worse. This is the thing that I find really funny. If you look right here, you can see there's actually space for the driver to move around a little bit. And these drivers have to be 90 degrees apart from each other. So I'm guessing that the reason that LifeLike added this little gap here was because they were so confident that the drivers would become uncorded, they knew they needed to allow them to separate enough to keep the locomotive from seizing. And that wasn't a big problem because every wheel was driven, but it's certainly not a sign that they had any confidence in their craftsmanship. So now that we've got the wheels and drivers off, we can actually test to see if the motor itself is working. I don't think that this one is burned out, but you never know. I do see that there is some funny stuff happening there. I don't know if it's skipping over the gear or what the case is, but even that doesn't sound quite right. So I think we'll try to see if we can take that apart as well. The easiest thing to do probably just to be remove this whole motor assembly, and then hopefully we can get the gears out. That way we can actually clean them properly. There's clearly been a little bit of not so great maintenance done on it. So now that that's all been removed, I'm going to try dropping the gearbox down, but before I do, I just want to show everybody something, which is that, you know, when I try to turn this gearbox manually, you can see the gears are binding really bad, and this could be because there's all that old lubricant there, or maybe a piece of ballast caught in one of the gears, but either way, it just shows that even though the motor seems to be running fine, these gears are also causing the drive to seize on top of whatever this was doing. So pretty weird stuff. So I'll just take all this out, and yeah, we'll clean up all these gears, and hopefully when we put this gearbox back together, these will turn okay. But yeah, I'm really not sure about this one. Those gears are really chewed up by the looks of it. Alright, well, it's now a while later, and I just got finished cleaning up all the parts, and I think I have a much more clear picture as to why this thing wasn't running quite right. You can see right here, these two bottom gears are actually in terrific shape. They have all their teeth, they've cleaned up quite well. Everything's very good there. But as for the main pivot gear, it's a little bit of a different story. This thing is in really poor condition. You can see that in certain spots, there is hardly any teeth left. These things have been stripped right down. So this would explain why the gearbox was stuttering as it was. And I was really hoping there was gonna be some grime caught up in here that might have been causing that, but unfortunately it does appear to be the teeth. So I guess we'll put it all back together and kind of just hope for the best here, because I really don't think that this main pivot gear is going to be able to grab the teeth on these gears very well anymore, but it's kind of all we've got. So hopefully this gearbox is not past the point of no return. Oh geez. At some point I collected a whole bunch of different gears, some of which were off LifeLike locomotives. However, they were way newer, so I don't know if maybe something like that would be a similar size. Yeah, see, this one's just slightly smaller, so it wouldn't be able to catch, because we could bore out this hole and make it the right size, but, you know, fundamentally they need to be about the same diameter, so I don't think that that is going to work for us. So we got a gear like this, but the teeth are obviously way too big. So I don't think we're going to find anything as far as that goes. Well, I was just digging through my spare parts bin here, and I'm pretty sure I found some good luck right here, folks. We'll see what we got going on, but basically this was a locomotive which subscribers donated to the channel, and I wanted to fix it, but the top gear was split, so I wasn't able to do anything about that, so this has kind of just been sitting here ever since. But while I was looking for these parts, I noticed something, which is that it was made July 25th, 1974, so it's a very similar era to the steam engine we're working on. And I looked right here, and we've got a gear which looks to be quite a similar size. So I think we're going to steal this part off of this locomotive, and we'll see if it works. I don't know if it's the same size. You know, this is a diesel, so it's possible they use something else. But yeah, we have got a spare. If anybody knows where you can buy gears for these sorts of locomotives, you know, maybe mimics on eBay, let me know though, because I do want to get this engine going as well, but without that top gear I couldn't really do anything. So I guess we'll try to pull this off, and then we'll see what we can do here. Really hoping that these are the same size. I don't know, but a lot of these companies, you know, they like to use cross-compatible parts at the time, just because it obviously made these a lot cheaper to make. So hopefully we'll be lucky here. Let's measure them up. Oh, this gear is wider. There's no doubt about that. The question is whether or not it has the same amount of teeth. So we'll line these up. And I think it is the same number. And it's possible the reason that this gear is wider is just because this one hasn't been stripped down. So it's possible we've now found the exact same part. I don't know. It looks like this one might be a little bit thicker on the end, but let's try to get this piece out here, and we'll see if we can put this inside the locomotive. Maybe we'll be lucky here. I don't know. It's going to be pretty remarkable if this thing can work with a gear off a diesel engine. Maybe that's why LifeLike used a bushing on here, so that they could reuse the same part. I was wondering why they used plastic on, you know, one side and not the other, but this is starting to kind of make sense here. Now the question is, will it actually fit inside the locomotive? I don't know. It looks about right. Let's see. Why does this look like it's popped out? Well, there we go. We've got the gearbox working without it stuttering, but something is not quite right here. I don't know if the metal is uneven or something, but yeah, there we go. Okay, wow, look at that. We've actually managed to make some progress with a random spare part. Never in a million years would I have guessed that would have worked, but we had some dumb luck on our side this time. So now I guess what we'll try to do is we'll try to clean up all these other parts, see if we can get the drivers and everything else bent back into shape, we'll put this whole thing back together and we'll hope for the best. But this is a huge promise. Like, this is so promising right here, because yeah, I did not think we were going to be able to replace this part right here, and without it, I think getting the locomotive going again would be pretty much impossible. So we have positive news, folks. So at this point, I guess I'll throw a little bit of oil in here just so that all of this is lubricated. These are all pretty low friction parts, but in this case too, once we actually get this back together, I want to throw some grease on here. That way we can hopefully prevent this gear from stripping out, because ultimately I don't think they put a thick enough gear, and I think that's why these strip out so easily. So hopefully putting some thick grease there will help to protect it. But in any case, that already seems to be turning even better now that it's got some fresh oil in it. And now I guess we'll work on trying to sort all of this out. You can see just how much grime is built up. It's really a miracle this thing could, you know, pick up any power whatsoever. Alright, so those are looking alright. I think now we'll focus on actually trying to straighten out the rods themselves, which are been pretty bad. Now generally, drivers need to be 90 degrees apart for them to work right, but since this is a geared locomotive, whereas in each set actually has its own set of gears, and they've installed this little cheating system, seems to turn just fine. So that's nice to see. Feels like this could all use quite a bit of oil though. Yeah, seems pretty good. You always want to check when working on a steam locomotive like this that none of these parts are contacting each other, because that can sometimes cause things to seize up. And we'll just throw a little bit of oil on all of these parts right here, which will just help everything flow a little bit better. I guess at this point what we'll try to do is we'll try to reinstall the motor and rewire the locomotive. These wires look fine. I have no problems reusing them, but obviously we're going to have to somehow solder them back onto this, which is going to be a bit of a treat. You know, optimally you'd want to remove these. Unfortunately, they melted them on, so the only way to pull them back off would be to actually break the plastic. I don't really like that idea, so I think we're going to try to solder the wires back on attached to the locomotive, which is not great, but I don't really think there's another way. So anyways, let's see what we can do here. That looks fine. I don't want to have anything to do with that, so I'll get rid of that and start fresh here. That's more like it. I guess I'll put the motor in place first before we go rewiring the locomotive, just because it might, you know, we need to know where these wires are going to go before we solder them. Okay, well, we got that soldered back on there. It's not a great soldering job, but I don't want to be holding something with a lot of heat too close to the plastic for too long, or else it's definitely going to end up melting it. So we got this thing all wired back up. I think we'll figure out where this light goes, and before we seal this thing up, we'll throw some grease on this gear just to be sure that we don't strip it out again. But I have some sense of optimism about this engine now. We're gonna throw on a healthy amount of grease. This is more lubricant than I'd usually put for something like this, but I really do not want that gear to strip out. So if I put some nice thick grease there, it's gonna reduce the chance of something like that happening, which is great. And there we go, we've got the engine all back together. Let's take this thing over to the track and see if our efforts have paid off. All right, well, let's see if that worked. I think it's got a decent chance. Let's give it some power. Oh boy. So weird. Looked like the gear had a good grip in there, but it's still slipping. Well, back over to the workbench, I guess. I tell you, I'm starting to run out of ideas with this. Good grief. Okay, that's my fault. So, when I was reassembling this thing, I sealed this part back up, so I didn't notice that there was a hole down there which holds the mount for the motor. So since I didn't put that screw back, it allowed the motor to kind of swivel a little bit in place. And as a result, it's not making proper contact with that gear. So we'll open this up, and yeah, there should be something right down there. Let's see if that works. See, I put that cover over because I didn't want these things jumping out as they are right now. Okay, 2 times the charm here. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the weight distribution is not so great, but the engine is running under its own power. Not even half bad. So we got this thing running, but it's clearly missing a weight because, like, it can actually pop a wheelie, as you can see. Never had a locomotive which is capable of doing that. I mean, this would look pretty cool if we had like an HO scale drag strip, but you know, it's not really practical for our purposes. So I need to find some lead or something to put in here, but at least we got the thing running again. I am frankly amazed. So I went looking through my spare parts bin and I found a piece of the nastiest metal out there. Let's see if we can somehow fit this up front. There had to have been something at some point that used to go there, but it seems to be long gone. So I went and got my hot glue gun, and while that heats up, I think we'll try to install a coupler on this locomotive. I suspect that this might actually be a genuine LifeLike coupler, so it should fit perfectly on this locomotive. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to get this into a good spot. Let's drop a little bit of hot glue down there. All right, let's go try this thing out for a 3rd time. Okay, let's see how it does with this weight. Ooh. I like that. You know what? This thing does not seem to be running half bad. Check it out. I am frankly amazed just to see this thing running again. I really had low expectations when I saw that gear, but just look at her go. And let's see what the low speed is like. Keep in mind, I mean, this is a locomotive with a 3-pole motor. Okay, so that's where it kicks out. It's not the best low speed out there, but still, really not bad for what it is. Yeah, it's like the thing can almost creep. That is crazy. Well, I am thrilled with that. Why don't we see if we can pull some cars now? All right, so I went ahead and set up a small 4-car consist for it to pull. It's nothing too extreme. I really don't want to strain the drive, but as you can see, it has no problems with that. Right on the back here too, I've got my brand new Union Pacific box car. Quite thrilled with how that looks. And yeah, anyways, you can see it's pulling this whole train without any issues. I'm so happy with this thing. You know, one of the most unreliable locomotives ever made. And here it is pulling a train around my layout for the first time in maybe 20 plus years. Who really knows? But yeah, needless to say, it's just fantastic to see what exactly the results are. So yeah, I think that's going to be about it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. I certainly enjoyed working on this thing. I'm surprised that those spare parts were enough to get it going again, but in any case, you know what? She is a runner. Before I finish off the video, I just want to thank EB Trains, who actually sent this locomotive in originally. I'm not sure if you're still watching these videos, but if you are, thanks a bunch. It was very generous to send this locomotive in. Anyways, with that, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching.